The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to our webinar today. My name is Tanya, and I'm the Marketing Manager over here at Struxoft Solutions, part of the Great Tech Group. Just for those of you who are new with us today, our Star Solution MWF, or Metalwood Framer, is our Revit-based BIM framing solution that allows users to automate Revit walls, floors, ceilings, and trusses for like-aged steel and also for wood. So today, our technician Aparna will be walking you through how to set up Revit walls and floor assemblies. So this includes how to set up Revit walls, floors, ceilings, and roofs for MWF, layers and function conditions for joins, creating joins, and then also layer functions in shop drawings. So just a couple housekeeping items before we start. Just like to remind everyone that at the end of the webinar, we'll be taking a couple of live questions. In order to be selected, please press the raise hand button on the dashboard. Just please also make sure that your mic is working correctly. If you'd prefer, you can also ask questions throughout the webinar by typing into the questions tab of the GoToWebinar dashboard. All right, that's it for me. I'm going to hand off to Aparna now.
Hi everyone, my name is Aparna Bhatia and I'm a senior implementation specialist at Struxoft. Wow, my words aren't coming out today. But basically today we're going to cover Revit walls and floor assembly setup in order for you to get the most out of MWF and the least amount of errors, right? We all love those. So let's get started, or let's get right into it. So over here, I have a project, or you could have a project that you might have either copy monitored the architectural walls and brought them into your project, or you might have just copy and pasted them into your project. You could have done any one of those things. And now that you have brought them into your project, you are noticing that there's some errors happening with MWF and you can't frame the walls the way you would like to frame them. Okay, so I'll just start with the floors first. There's a few basic rules that we need to follow for floors. So over here I have a floor. I'm just going to go and review the type properties of the floor. So I'll go ahead and click on edit type, and then I'm going to go and click on edit for the structure. And over here, right away, I can see that this floor may not work with MWF, or it may place our structural framing incorrectly. The reason for this is there are multiple layers within the core boundary. So this is a rule that's across the whole map in for walls, for floors, for roofs, for ceilings. For all of them, you're not allowed to have more than one layer within the core boundary. And another thing I also like to bring up is that it's important to set up the functions of your layers properly, because this shows up in your shop drawings, and in your shop drawings you can set it up to say, I only want to see the sheathing, or I only want to see the structural framing, or I want to see both. Right? So you have that flexibility if you set up your functions for your floors correctly. Whereas if I set both of these up to be structure, you will have a little bit of an issue trying to separate them on the shop drawings. You might have to start creating filters, view templates, and all of those extra elements. So if you want to show just the structure, you can basically set the wood sheathing up to be substrate, and that way when you're in your shop drawings, you can actually separate, create a separate sheathing shop drawing, and then create a separate wood studs or joist layout shop drawing, basically. All right. So the first rule of thumb, we need to we only need to have one layer in the core boundary. So how do we do that? We're just going to move this out. So you'll see right now the way the floor assembly is. You'll see that the total thickness is 9 inches, 95 over 256. I'm just going to move the structural or the substrate out of the core boundary. Nothing changes within the thickness. It's all good. And nothing changes anywhere else except for the fact that now MWF will actually frame the floor much more nicely, okay? So that's the first rule of thumb. The second rule of thumb for floors, roofs, or ceilings is do not set this to variable, okay? MWF does not support it. And I'll also explain why it does not support it, okay? So I'll just hit OK for this guy right here. And I'll hit OK there as well. And I'll just draw a basic, draw a quick little floor. Let's draw a concrete slab, for example, okay? The reason I'm drawing a concrete slab is it's just easier to see the lines and see how nice and parallel they are. Okay, so if I wanted to maybe add like a slope or something to the slab, I can add a slope, but then over here, what I'm going to do actually is go edit type and come here and make this variable. All right, so I'm going to make this variable. And now that I made this variable, I'm going to modify sub elements and add a point. I'm just going to add a point in the middle. But before I add it, I'm going to say -2 inches. Well, not -20 feet. That would be a little too much. -2 inches, okay? And it's relative to the top of the floor. So that's the dimension I've given it for its slope. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to draw a quick little section so we can go see what it did to the floor. So here, this is very bad for structural integrity of the slab, right? And this is not just for concrete. This is mostly for concrete, but also for joists and fun things like that. You don't really expect your joists to go down like this or affect the integrity of the joists like this, right? Maybe you have concrete topping, or you might have tapered insulation on top of your roof, and you might want to do something like this. It's totally understandable. When you have a situation like that, we always recommend to create your structural layer of your floor the way you need it to be created, and then have your tapering or your variable values to be another layer on top of your floor, or like another floor that gets placed on top, or another roof that gets placed on top, okay? And the reason for that is this is really bad for structural integrity. So when I look at this, right, you can see that this is, let me see if I can do, let's do TX. Okay, so you can see that this line, this guy here is actually the top of the floor. And then you can see that this guy here is the bottom of the floor, right? So when I'm trying to place my studs, if it's following the top, your studs will be outside your floor, and NWF can't really read that, and it will be like, oh, the studs don't fit, so it's going to error out, right? They don't fit inside the boundary of the floor. So typically we recommend not to do this because the lines are not parallel. If you did want to slope the top, however, you can do it another way. You could uncheck variable, we'll have it, and you'll still have your slope. And this is a much better and more acceptable way of doing things. You can definitely have that slope down here. Another thing to keep in mind is typically you would only have 2 slopes maximum in your floor, your roof, or your ceiling. And that would be because you won't really have your joists won't actually place like this, right? So if your span of your joists is this direction, you can't really have them bend down here and then go back up, right? You'll probably split up the panel in the middle here. So you would probably need to set up, you would want to set up your panels separately like that as well. So you might actually want to come here and be like, actually my boundary, I'm going to just copy this. Actually, my boundary line is in the middle here, right? So I can do that. I can move this to the center and say that's one slab. And then I can create another slab for the other sloped portion. And I can literally, I can basically reset the shape and have my slope arrow within this to achieve the same results, right? So there's many ways to slope your slabs. This is just one example of how you would do it. And since everything is perpendicular, or sorry, parallel, the top and bottom are parallel, your studs or your joists will actually place correctly within the floor slab. Okay. That's the first rule with, or one of the rules with floors. The similar rules apply for roofs. So if you're drawing flat roof, or let's say if you're just gonna quickly draw a roof like this, and then we'll get defines roof slope. Let's drop that in. So when you try to frame your roof panel and it looks like this, you always have to first make sure that you see this is obviously incorrect. You'll probably need to push this up, and you can call this substrate if you like. That's totally fine. In this case, since it's a concrete structure along with metal deck, if you actually had joists, this would make a lot more sense. So I can maybe change the type of roof we have. Let's go with generic 12-inch and then edit that type. Okay. So over here we have a single category. We can customize this to add more layers. Like maybe we want to add sheathing on the top. We'll make sure that it comes out of the structural or the core boundary, and we'll apply our materials accordingly as we need. So make sure there's only single layer in the core boundary. It's very similar to floors, and also it has that variable option. Again, same rules as the floors, right? So just keep in mind when you're drawing your roofs, you actually have it separated like this. All right. So I'm just gonna quickly add a sheathing material here. Let's go type in PLY. Plywood. There you go. We have plywood sheathing. And we're gonna make this 3/4 of an inch. And then maybe we have our joists are 1 foot joists. So we are gonna type in dimensional, wood dimensional lumber. And that is our floor for now. I'm gonna rename this to be wood, oh sorry, roof, wood, roof, joists. All right, so similar rules, no double layers inside the core boundary. And there you go, you have your roof there with your multiple layers. Typically when you frame your roof, you'll have a panel created here, 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 and here. And that's just how the roof functionalities are for MWF, all right? And like I mentioned, the ceilings follow the same rules and the same pattern, patterns, like I mentioned. So if I click on this ACT ceiling, if I am having it supported by the floor, great. Sometimes you might use the ceiling as a soffit underneath. So maybe you want to frame the soffit. You could create it as a floor, or you could create it as a ceiling, whatever you prefer. But the rules are pretty much the same. Single structural layer inside the core boundary. And that's basically it. Okay. So those are the basic rules for floors, roofs, and ceilings. Now let's get into the fun part, which is the walls. There's a lot to know about walls, right? Walls are something we work with every single day. And we want to make sure that whatever walls we've copied from the architects, they are set up the right way so we don't have any errors when it comes to MWF, all right? So I'm gonna come here and just quickly get rid of these wonderful floors and walls, and let's, oh sorry, floors and roofs, and let's start talking about walls. So I'm gonna create similar for the wall, and I'm gonna have it, I'm gonna have it go up to level 2 and start drawing that way. There you go. So walls. Let's get started with the edit type portion of it, okay? So for walls, it's really important to have a single layer within the single layer within the core boundary. Like I mentioned, if I move the wall or move the substrate out, it doesn't change anything in the wall, and it doesn't modify anything in the wall. So before you change any of these, before you edit the type of the wall at all, first thing I would double check for the wall is where the location line is located, okay? So if I right click, I always like to do this for the entire project. So I'll right click, select all instances in entire, oops, I trigger fingers, right? So I'll select all instances in entire project. And you can see there's 126 of these walls drawn, probably 125, and this one's just the sixth one. But you have 126 instances of this wall drawn. Just make sure that the location line is the same for all of them. Whether it is the structural, the core center line, it wouldn't make sense to use the core center line if there are multiple layers within the core in this case. So maybe you want to set it to core face interior. That's totally doable, and so on and so forth, right? So just make sure the location line is exactly where you need it to be. And the reason for this is that you want to make sure that if you do notice there are some discrepancies in the wall structure or the wall assembly from what the architect might have specified in their drawings, and you wanted to fix that on your side, if you do adjust the wall, it doesn't move that location line, okay? It adjusts it based on that location line. So I typically like to pick either one of the faces of either face of the core or core center line if I know that the walls are already single layer, okay? This is also a very good tip for when you are working with, maybe you have copy monitored all the architectural walls, and now you want to swap them with the walls that you have already template mapped in your multi-layer settings, and so on and so forth. So maybe I wanted to replace this wall with just a 6-inch stud wall with, or 8-inch stud wall with sheathing, as an example. I will pick maybe the core center line, or maybe I'll pick the core face interior in order for me to place that wall, so that when I replace them, I'm not adjusting or moving the location of the core. I'm leaving it exactly where it is located. And I typically like to use core face interior because the sheathing's typically on the outside. So if the architects have added, or whoever drew the wall has added the sheathing layer as part of the core boundary, you can easily adjust it and not affect the wall or not move the wall. Whereas if I did core center line, it would nudge the wall a little bit, because the core center line earlier was maybe, say maybe the sheathing was 1/2 inch, and you have 7.5 inch stud for the wood stud, for an 8-inch wood stud. So you'll have your core center line earlier was at 4 inches from the face of the core, and now it's still at that 4-inch location, but the size of your structural layer or your core boundary got smaller, and now your center line and your interior face and exterior face are no longer in the right location. So I like to go core face interior. My spiel is a little long, but it's over. So let's get started with edit type. We're gonna go in and take a look. And over here, you'll notice that we have the substrate inside our core boundary. So if I would have set it to center line, it would have been the center line of 5/8 plus 7.5 inches, right? And then if I move the 5/8 out, it would basically take the 7.5 inches divided by 2, and then again, like the interior face would move. Since we have set it to core face interior, I can just move this up. You'll notice nothing got adjusted in the total thickness. Even if I move it down, nothing got adjusted. Move it back up, nothing got adjusted. Okay, so that's something you should take a look at before you change or adjust your assembly for your walls. Okay. The other thing I wanted to mention is the functions. Okay, the functions matter a lot when it comes to join conditions. Just in Revit, the join conditions itself, the functions matter a lot. Okay, so you have, say if you have like a finish one, when a finish one connects to a finish one, it will try to join, especially if it is the same material. So you'll get a nice clean join. Whereas if you have one material set up as a finish one, another material set up as a, and the same material set up as a finish two, the wall assembly is exactly the same. The only thing you've changed is the function. I'll show you what that looks like as well. But the only thing you've changed is the function. It affects the join condition in Revit itself, and also will, since if you're using multi-layer joins, it will affect that a little bit as well. Okay, just a quick disclaimer. And another thing the function is really important for is if you follow specific rules from the beginning of the project, you can set them up for yourself. But if you follow specific rules like, hey, my shop drawings, I will need a shop drawing just for my framing, my wood framing, and then I will need a shop drawing just for my plywood sheathing. Okay, so if you set up your functions correctly, I can set up my shop drawings to say, I only want to see the structural function layers in this shop drawing. And then if I set up my sheathing correctly to be substrate, I can basically say that, okay, I only want to see substrate in here, and maybe if I wanted to show the structure, I could choose to see that as well in maybe halftone or something like that, right? So I will make sure that my functions are set up correctly. There's another thing I wanted to let you guys know, and that would be sometimes, you know, when you add or create a wall and you're getting random errors, like, so maybe I added something here, I'll make it a 2-inch something. I'm going to delete it a little later. I'm going to hit OK. And over here it tells you error. Row 3, function priorities cannot ascend from core boundary to finish face. What that basically means is layer number 1 is here. Okay. Your start point always starts from your structure. So layer number 1 is here. The next layer is layer number 2, which is substrate, and then the membrane layer has no priority sequence. It can be placed anywhere, right? So it's per preference, per code, as you see fit. So for membrane layer, it can be placed anywhere. But in order for this to work, you need the numbers from the core to go ascending order to the finishes. Okay, so from here, this will be 1, that will be 2, that will be 3. You cannot have a 1 again. That's basically what I was telling you. Like you can't have a 1 in the middle randomly out of nowhere. You need to have some kind of sequence or some sort of sequence. So if you did want a structure piece here, you gotta think about another way to get that there. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to come here and we're going to hit the delete command because we want this to be 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And then the same thing happens here. As long as this number is larger than the 1 here, you should be good. And also they're in sequence or they're in order, basically. So from here, it will be 1. That might be 2. That might be 3. That might be 4. That might be 5, right? So that's the way the functions work. So if you ever get that error, that's just a quick tip. I know a lot of folks also like to run wrapping around for their walls and stuff. Wrapping is great, but Revit doesn't actually consider it 3D. Revit considers it 2D. So basically what that means is it's just drawing the wrapping for you as a visual representation. It's not actually creating references for those elements, and I'll show you what that means right here. So I'll set up the wrapping to be exterior, just to show you what that looks like. And then if you have another thing I like to note is if you have any sweeps and reveals in your panels or your walls, just make sure to do a test panel or create a test MWF panel, just so that we can actually have some like reference as to like, are the sweeps going to affect my quick creation if I'm running it on 2,000 walls or 300 walls or something like that, right? Are the reveals going to affect that? So test it out on a small portion of walls, or test it out on 1 or 2 walls, and then make the executive decision whether you need the sweeps and reveals or not. If you are working in the model with the architects or any other consultants, and they really need the sweeps or they really need the reveals, the option you would have is to separate your core and substrate layer as one wall, and then have the exterior finishing as another wall. So what that would mean is these two will be the only layers. So number 4 and number 6 would be the only layers in your wall where you're creating MWF framing. And for the architects, they will have a wall that has the membrane layer, the thermal barrier, air barrier, and then the finish that has the sweeps or the reveals, basically, right? Maybe they have a nice little brick reveal here, and that might be causing your walls to not frame properly. And that is just because of the way the reveals work. Sometimes it, if it encroaches into the structural space, or Revit considers it encroaching into the structural space, you might have your studs end super short and be right under the reveal or right under the sweep. So just keep that in mind. If you do have any reveals or sweeps, just do a few tests and see if your panels are creating properly. Add a window in there, check if it's creating properly. If everything is working great, no need to change it. But if it is not, then please do make sure that you change it. And then sometimes also we've seen issues happen for users when they use assign layers, and they assign maybe like the bottom half over here to be concrete, and then they have the top half be brick, right? So sometimes when you do that, it causes MWF to break. So we typically recommend, if you do have walls like that, separate your finishes from your actual structural layers, and you should be okay. You could still have your finishes the way you need them to be, and your structural layer will be exactly the way you need it to be for framing with MWF. All right. So I'm just going to wrap at the ends here and hit OK. All right, give it a quick second. And then I have that set up and hit OK. And there you go. So we actually have it wrapping. I'm just going to set this to hidden line. No, there you go. So typically when I do dimensions, so I'll type in DI for dimensions. If I was to dimension this wall, I can actually refer and grab each one of these layers manually or individually, right? I know that looks like a wonderful little mess, but it's okay. I'm just trying to get the point across that you can actually select these ones individually, and you can actually see how these work and how these function, right? So we can do that, and we can add this guy here. So you'll see that it's selecting each one individually. Now, if I create the same one and I try to go, yeah, the end is selectable. But if I tab and try to select these guys, these are not references. They're just visual representation of the element, right? So since these are not references according to Revit, we can't really wrap our sheathing and elements according to that either, all right? So that's just something to keep in mind when you're creating your walls. Just because it shows that it's wrapping does not mean that it is wrapping. If you did want your panels to be cut short and you know that this is the wrapping condition every single time, you could basically do the dimension from here to here. So that's 5 1/8. And you can have your panel cut short by using either the join conditions, or you can have it cut short by using, I'm just going to quickly create a panel that is active, close, create. You can use basically the structural extension end or extension starts to pull it back accordingly, okay? So if you did need to pull it back, you can use these values to pull it back. That was, let's see if it was -5, 1/8 inches, oops, inches. Let's just do it at the start. Oh, that's the end, sorry. So we'll come here and see it. So you'll see that it's actually cutting back according to what you needed it to cut. So if you wanted to set this up in your templates, you can definitely do that. It just creates a little bit of an issue because sometimes it's the start end that you have to adjust, sometimes it's the end that you have to adjust. So it's all up to how you need to create those conditions, right? So just because we have created the wrapping does not mean that the studs will actually wrap according to it, okay? There are workarounds, but it's just not automatic. So I'm just gonna get rid of the cutbacks and all that fun stuff. And I'm going to delete these dimensions. So right now we are going to go ahead and talk about joins. So I'm gonna delete this and say, okay. So join conditions. Sometimes I'm gonna create similar and have the wall drawn right there. Okay, so we have our walls. You see how they perfectly join exactly the way they're supposed to. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna duplicate this wall here. So I'm gonna edit type and I'm gonna hit duplicate and I'm gonna have it called 2, brick on wood stud 2. And then all I'm gonna change is the function for the brick to be 2 and finish 2, and the function for the plasterboard to be 1. Okay, finished 1, and I'm changing brick to finish 2. And I'm only changing this one wall. And you'll notice right away, it started creating these lines to separate the two finishes. Okay, so that's how Revit can make sure you have a clean join, is if you actually have your finishes be even, basically, right? The other way you can double check is you could actually get a clean join sometimes out of these conditions as well. And that is basically when you take a look at the join geometry here, you can actually see, which one's considered the main wall. So right now, this one's considered the main wall, but at the same time, it's cutting short here, right? So if I wanted to just see what the next preview was, this is how the preview would be. And now you can see that it's actually no lines are showing, right? So in this condition, no lines might be showing, but you have to make sure that you go in and double check or update that join condition over and over again, right? When you draw those walls. So it's typically recommended you just, use the same functions. So like you'll use finish 1, and finish 2, so that they'll have a nice clean edge like that, okay? Just something to keep in mind. Okay, so that is that. And then over here, and now let's talk about real like MWF joins, right? So over here we can maybe, let's say that this guy needs to be the horizontal wall here needs to be the gypsum wallboard needs to extend all the way into the wall here. Maybe you're doing prefab and this is one panel and this is another, and you want it to be like that, right? So how do I make sure that when I'm creating a multi-layer panel and I'm adding gypsum wallboard here, I'm adding sheathing there, how do I get the elements to extend properly, right? So first thing I'm going to add is a regular join so that I can specify that my stud needs to be moved accordingly, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come here. I'm going to select both the walls. There are no panels on these walls right now. I'm going to place a join. And I'm going to select simple A. There's quite a few. There's typical A, typical B. But for right now, we can do simple A, or we can do simple A with overlapping, or we'll just do simple A right now. Okay, so we can do simple A. So yeah, we can do simple A right now, and then we'll say okay. So basically, once we do simple A, we know that that condition is going to get applied here. And the arrow tells you that this is the main wall and this is going to continue all the way through. Okay, if that's how you want it set up, great. If not, then we can always change that by selecting the join, and we can set the main wall and select the main wall. Maybe I want this guy to be the main wall. Okay, so now you'll see the arrow goes this way, and it's trying to set this to be the main wall, okay? Then the other thing we want to do is make sure we add a multi-layer join so that our sheeting here, or sorry, our gypsum wallboard here actually goes all the way up to through the structure and goes all the way up to that edge, right? So let's see how to do that. So first thing we're going to do is select our walls. Again, no panels are drawn yet. Also, if you don't see any of these join conditions in your, or you don't see any join conditions are available, then you just have to remember to load data before you run through joins or add any markers to your project. So that's in the settings command, and then you have to click on load data, and it will add in all, it will load in all the markers that MWF uses to create these joins and read them basically. So just disclaimer, make sure you load data first. Let's continue. Now we're going to create, I can place join, but there are no multi-layer joins created right now in this project. So I'm going to click on manage join definitions. And over here in manage join definitions, I'm going to create a new join definition. Okay. If I wanted, I could create an auto join rule, but right now I'm not going to. I'm just going to select my brick on wood stud wall, and I'm going to select my other brick on wood stud. There, brick on wood stud wall. So I changed both of them to be the exact same wall, so you can see there's two of the same walls selected. So that's what I'm going to name it. So I'm going to call this corner. Corner brick wood stud. Okay, that's all. So we'll hit OK. So we'll create one of these wall types here. And now it's telling me that this one's the main wall, right? So when I hover over these layers, you can see that they get highlighted, right? So if I hover over this one, it's telling me that I'm selecting this guy here. Maybe I hover over this guy and it's selecting that one. The 0 I know is going to be the structural layer. And then the 0 I know here is going to be the structural layer, right? So make sure you make sure you're clicking the right layer to change. So right now we want to modify this one. So I'm presuming that would be this guy here. Okay. So that guy here is this layer over there. So what we right now you can see that it's cutting long. So when it says long, I wish I could zoom in. Basically, when it says long, it just means that this one takes precedence over this one. So it is currently cutting correctly, and it is going to the correct edge of the layer, right? So now, if I wanted to make this guy go all the way to the end here, all I'm going to do here is if I specify a positive value, it's actually going to cut it back. So it's going to make it go boop backwards because that's a cut back, right? So now I want to push it forward, and I want to push it forward by this amount, right? Because that's the thickness of the stud, and I wanted to get to that end over there. Right now it's already cutting to this end, so this is the only distance I need to cover. I'll just type in negative 7.5, which is 7.5. And then we have it here, and you can see that it's going to extend the gypsum wallboard there and hit OK. All right. So now that we've created our join condition for our multi-layer settings, we're going to come back here and say, let's place that join, right? We did all this work. Might as well place it. So we're going to click on that, and we're going to go OK. Doop, 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 doop. Give it a quick second, let it load in the symbol. And there we go. So it placed our multi-layer join. It's telling me that this is the wall that's taking precedence. And I am going to, we're going to just test it out by framing the wall. If it's not creating it properly, we can always rotate the main walls and see how that goes. All right. So we'll do, did I set this up? I think I set it up. Let me quickly double check. I'm going to come here, exterior, and then we're going to say exterior brick on wood stud. Yeah, we have exactly what we need to create here. We'll hit OK, and we are going to quick create. All right, that's OK. So did I place this join incorrectly? Let's double check. Let's go double check this join. How about that? So it should have placed it properly. Okay, so we'll go ahead and double check that join condition in a second. Okay, that's fine. So we'll go and double check that join condition in a second. Why it didn't push the stud the way it's supposed to. Okay, but you can see here that when I click on the sheathing piece or the gypsum wallboard piece over here, I'm just going to quickly hide this stud so that we can see it clearly. When you see this member here, it's actually going all the way to that edge. So when you're doing your calculations or you're trying to grab the data from your sheathing, you can actually see that it starts all the way from the edge because we placed a multi-layer join condition at that edge. Okay, so whenever you're placing your joins, you always have to make sure you place your single layer joins first. I'm going to quickly just fix up this wall. It looks good. 7.5. Okay, maybe I'll fix up the stud. Oh, I have a metric stud. Wonderful. So let me just quickly change this up. So, oops. So that's 1.5, 1.5, 0.5, and then over here, let's make that 7.5, 7.5. Okay, there you go. This looks a lot better than what it was before. All right. So whenever you're placing your joins, always make sure you place your single layer join first, which is for your structural layer, and then you will place your multi-layer join. So I'm going to go back to this wonderful guy here and hit OK. Really wants to make that wall the main wall. All right, we'll give you what you want. And then we will come here and click on this guy here. And then we'll say place joins because we've already created that join condition. And we can click on this one and say OK. And right now it's trying to consider this guy the main wall. Let's go ahead and swap that over. Let's regenerate first, actually. Let's see what it gives us. Oh, sorry. If you do have any questions, please go ahead and type them up in the questions dialog. And yeah. So right now it gave me this wall as the main wall. Let's go swap that over. Okay. What? Okay. So let's come back here and say align. Nope, that's to rotate it. Sorry, guys. Give me a quick second. Let me see if I just rotate it. If it does that, why not, right? You can always try everything. Let's say align joins. And I want to align it to this guy. No? No? Okay. I'm still learning how to do multi-layer joins, but it's fine. Let's see if we can, let's rotate it and make the other guy the main wall, okay? And see if that still, if that fixes it. So let's delete and come here and come here and come here, go to joins, place join. We'll make this guy the main wall with simple A. Go ahead. All right, and then we'll make this the main wall, join, set main wall, this one. All right, and then if I come here, if I come here and here, I can come in and place. So you'll notice that I didn't place any multi-layer join placed any multi-layer join, but it still regenerated the structural layers with just placing a regular single layer join. So I'm going to come back here and go and place my multi-layer join. Okay, hopefully that does the trick. And we're going to go ahead and regenerate these walls. Hit OK. Give it a quick second, because it basically scans the joins, places the studs and the members the way they need to, and then it recreates or regenerates the entire panel to meet those requirements. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I am going to go to shaded, and I am going to hide these two walls, and you'll notice that this one grabbed the material from the wall panel that we had, and it colored it to be, or it made it basically be the interior plasterboard. And you'll see that the interior plasterboard actually goes to where you need it to go, right? If it was a closed, fully closed panel, basically. So yeah, that is basically it for this webinar. If you have any questions, please go ahead and type them up.
Awesome. Thank you, Aparna. So as she just mentioned, we have time to answer a couple of questions. So if you'd like to go ahead and pose a question live, please raise your hand now by clicking on the hand icon in the control panel. Just please make sure that your mic is working correctly. And just while we wait for any questions to come through, I'd just like to remind everyone that the recording of the presentation will be sent through tomorrow. As always, please feel free to share the recording with any colleagues. And if you're looking for the recording a little earlier, you can usually find it at the end of the day today across our social media channels. All right, so we'll just give it a second, see if there's any hands raised. Oh, there is a question that did come through the questions chat. This is from Ahmed. So the question is, if architects' walls have reveals and sweeps and we remove the finishes, will this change location of the wall?
Yes, so that's why when we were trying to adjust the wall structure or adjust the moving the substrate out of the core layer. Basically what we did, the first step we did was make sure that the location line is set up exactly where we want our walls to be aligned to. So like pick a line, pick a face of the wall where you know that that face cannot change. Typically, if the architect has already done their work and then they've given you the model, you would probably just, it would really be easy for you to, I'm just gonna swap this over to the other brick on wood stud so I won't affect the entire project right now. But basically, say if this is the wall that you wanted to get rid of the finishes for, right? So as long as my my location line right now is set to core face interior, so I'll draw a detail line here, just so you have an idea. That's where my location line is set up. And that's the core face interior right now. If I wanted to get rid of the architectural finishes, I can just come here, hit delete, hit delete, hit delete. Maybe I don't even care about the interiors. I can get rid of those. But right now, since I have multi-layer settings set up for both of them, I'll keep them in. So let's say you have something like that. You have something like that. All that did was it kept the structural layer exactly where it's supposed to be. So it didn't move the structure of the wall. It did make the wall skinnier, or it made the wall a little nice and thin here without any extra unnecessary assemblies that we are not concerned about right now. So usually when you're in the structural discipline, you would kind of trace over the architectural walls and make them your own, like make them your own structural walls, because you have your own filters set up and you have all of those set up the way you like them to be set up. And if you remove the finishes, you also have to remember to double check and remove the sweeps. Okay, sometimes you remove the finishes, but the sweeps still exist because they're aligned or associated to the edges. So they're associated to the exterior edge or the interior edge. So you could either just decide to remove the sweeps and reveals if you're not working in the same model as the architects, or you can just remove their finishes and remove their sweeps and reveals from your specific wall, and make sure that if you are working in the same model as the architects, you'll probably just keep the architect's wall exactly the way it is. Like, I'll use this as an example. So maybe this was the architect's wall. I'll use that the way it is. But then this one is my wall. So when I'm drawing my wall, I'll just draw it using the core face interior line. And I'll just draw it over top of the architect's. Right? Oops. I pressed tab too quick, I guess. There you go. So you'll see that I can place my wall over top of the architect's wall. Yeah, there are double instances, but if you place it on different work sets and play around with it a little bit, you should be okay. So that's basically your wall. And then if the architect wants their wall back, they have their full wall right there. Okay, does that answer your question, Emma?
All right, fantastic. I'm just going to hold on a few more seconds to see if there's any follow-up questions.
Mm-hmm. Oh, perfect.
Perfect. All right, well, that looks like that's a wrap for today. For any follow-up questions after we have closed the session, please feel free to reach out to us. Our contact details will be provided along with the recording tomorrow. As well as if you'd like to set up a one-on-one demonstration, get in touch with us. We'd be more than happy to set that up for you. All right, we'll now be ending the webinar. I just want to say a big thank you to Aparna and also thank you to everyone who tuned in today. Have a great day.
Thanks, guys. Bye.